So to give us a head start, and so that you don't have to look at and watch me type and feel sorry for me, I have went ahead and I've put in the instance variables from this slide for the rental class. So I've got 5 here, and I have 5 over here. Now I need to still generate my getters and setters. I need to generate my default no arg constructors, any special helper constructors, and then of course my toString. So I'm going to run through that really quick just in case you've slept since last week and you forgot how to do that. Remember, we can go up to source, generate getters and setters, check marks next to all the instance variables, and let them know where we want to insert it. We want to insert it after the list of instance variables. I'm going to generate those. There they are. Next, I'm going to insert my default no arg constructor. It's generate constructor from superclass, and I want to put that after my my last instance variable. Oh, there we go. Let's put the wrong screen. Generate. Any helper methods, so, or excuse me, helper non-default constructors. We'll use one for all 3. I'm going to go ahead and generate one more too, just so I don't have to put in as much information. I'm going to generate one that has rent amount, bedrooms, baths, and is ADA accessible. So we'll just leave that the address part out. And so now I've got 3. It's really common to generate multiple non-default constructors. Obviously, you need the default no arg constructor for a lot of frameworks and libraries to work, but the non-default constructors are really just there to make your life easier. So there will be times where in Java 2, we will create a constructor that maybe doesn't pull in a local date or a local time, or a local date time in that aspect too. And we'll just have it set to the current date and time to save time, basically. So these are really here to help you build your program be whatever you need it to be. Now the last thing I need to do is generate any helper methods, and remember those go at the end of our class. So source, generate toString, and I want it to include all of the instance variables, put it at the very end. So there's my result class. Should be good to go. I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to flip over to house. My house is going to get all of my instance variables from my rental, but I need a keyword to make that happen. One of the common mistakes that I do see is people try to use the word inherits, but it's a word it extends, same idea. House extends, and then I put in the name of that class, rental. I'm good to go here. I still need to generate my getters and setters for my instance variable. I'll do that really quick. And I need to generate my default no argument constructor. Now this is where it gets interesting. And I don't know if you noticed this whenever you got playing around with the money clip project, but you can decide which constructor do you want to implement for your superclass. So in this case, I'm creating a default no arg constructor for my house. I'm going to just use the default no arg constructor for my rental class. It needs to go after the instance variable. There it is. So this makes that call whenever I create a house. It also makes that call up to the super constructor. So basically, it creates an object that's a rental, and then it turns it into a house. Now I can also generate more constructors that will help me. So I'm going to generate one that will let me set all the instance variables for the rental and the instance variable for the house. And the way that you do that is you can select which super constructor do you want to call. So I can automatically include the instance variable for the house, but which one do I want to call for the rental? There are 5 instance variables inside of that rental, so I'm going to call the one that calls and sets all of them. Now, whenever this happens, it's going to generate it. It will make a call to the super constructor, pass in those values that come in, and you'll see the last one is the one for the special class, or is one for the subclass. So there's that Boolean has yard. So whenever it calls the super constructor, it's going to pass in those values for each of those instance variables and pass that over to call the constructor for the superclass, set those values as appropriately, then it returns control back over to the subclass and sets the one for yard. So cool, so cool. Thank you, Java gods, for coming up with that. I could set more as well. I'm just going to use, I think I'll just use this one in an effort to save time. Now, did I generate a toString? Nope, not yet. Got to do that. Now, with the toString, I can decide how do I want this to display. Do I want it to just return hash yard, or do I want to see the values that are set inside of the superclass as well? probably want to see the values that are set inside of the superclass. So you can click the down arrow next to inherited methods, and you can call the toString from the superclass and include the field from subclass as well. So in this case, I believe, we'll double check it, I believe it'll have the instance variable for the subclass first, followed by the call to the toString for the superclass. So let's generate it and double check. Yes, all right, good guess, couldn't remember. So here it will tell us that it's a house, it'll give the value and has yard, and then it calls the toString from the superclass, which if we pop over to the toString from the superclass, you'll see that it will return all of this. So we'll have all the data in there from the superclass as well. All right, I'm going to do apartment really quick. If we have any questions, go ahead and let's type them in the chat box, and I'll address them now while I run through setting up this apartment. Generate those getters and setters first. Cool. Let's do our default no arg constructor. Any specialized constructors? Oops, clicked the wrong one. Oh, I got a problem. Up to this point, it hasn't made a difference. If I want this to be treated as a rental, I have to tell it. So right now, this is just a public class called apartment. It is not getting all of those instance variables from rental yet because I haven't defined that relationship. So up here inside of my public class apartment, I need to tell it to extend rental. Spelling matters. There we go. Now, whenever I go to generate my constructors using fields, there are my superclass constructors. That's what threw me off. I was going to use this one that took all 3 or all 5, and I couldn't find it. So let's insert it after the default. And of course, let's generate a toString. Grab the toString from the superclass, generate it there. Now, as you're going through and creating this, you will probably have an error that you don't have a class called building, and do you want to create it? I don't have this error right now because I've already created a building class. So you may find it useful to go in here and create your building class first. My building class has already been set up with the instance variables, but I haven't generated all the components to it yet. That will get that error to go away so that you can generate the rest of it. All right, no questions. Let's pop over to building very quickly. Now, it does not inherit from anything. So it will be used inside of our apartment object, but our apartment is not a building, or our building is not an apartment. So it is just a supporting class in this case. I've got just a couple things to do. You know what they are. Take these guys. Oops. I'm going to generate. I said oops because I generated them above the instance variables, which I should not have. They should go below the instance variables. Remember, the order of our class goes instance variables, constructors, getters and setters, and any helper methods. I already did that one. I keep missing it. My mouse is on a sticky part on the table. All right, and last but not least, my toString. I don't have, again, it doesn't inherit from anything, so all I would do is get the inherited methods from the super class, which in this case is the object class. There we go. All right. Now, let's go down here. Let's talk about lease. So our lease is our next thing that's ready to go. So I believe I have all of our instance variables in for our lease, our rental, our start date time, end date time, and our renter. But what I haven't done is created the renter class yet. So I wanted to show you how to do that quickly in Eclipse. So if you try to use an object that you haven't created yet, excuse me, a class that you haven't created yet, you can see whenever you mouse over it, there's 12 quick fixes available. Renter cannot be resolved to a type. So this is what happened whenever I put building inside of my apartment. And all I had to do was say create class renter or create class building. And it will create it. It'll populate it inside of the name and don't need any of these other components. So then it will just create that class for you. And you can put in your instance variables like you need. Private string first name, last name, and phone number. So I wanted to show you how to do that really quickly with your inside the lease class. Rentals up here at the top, this is going to use our rental object, our super class. So this means that we can use any class that inherits from rental. So we'll be able to use our houses and our apartments inside of this lease class. So next, you know what I've got to do next? Let's do it really quickly. Here is my default no arg constructor. Let's get I'm using fields. We'll just put all of them in there. And then finally, my toString at the very end. Okay, so I think I've got them all right. Got 6, and I should have 6. Cool. All right, that Eclipse thankfully makes short order of doing all that. So now let's create our rental tester that has our main method inside of it, and that's what we'll use to create different objects in.